Well, I think it's safe to say that Smackdown won this week. What is up? GoodMicWork back at you. The first commentary of 2017. I hope everybody out there had a great holiday season and a very fun and happy and safe new year. We're now into 2017. It's time to get back to reality and back to business. And I think we started out the new year in a relatively decent way as far as WWE television goes. In this episode 399, you're just going to hear me briefly talk about Raw and Smackdown and get into a few of the details on some of the storylines there, but nothing anywhere close to a match-by-match review. And I'm going to get into a few other news items that have been going around that I feel are worthy of talking about. And then I'm going to get out of here and spend the rest of the week working on episode 400. That'll be up in a few days, maybe about a week, but it'll definitely be done before I come up here to do another Raw and Smackdown review. Also, I'm recording this commentary on my not-so-favorite mic, so this one's going to sound a little bit different, I think, than some of my previous commentaries. I apologize for that. As much as I want to talk about SmackDown first and how great that show was, I feel like we have to start with Raw because Raw came on Monday. This show was primarily centered around Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho and Seth Rollins, but also Bill Goldberg. Mick Foley opened up Raw with a brand new haircut, and he looks skinny as hell since he's been losing all this weight doing DDP yoga. Very proud of Mick. I think that's awesome. His hip surgery shit that's going around seems really crazy. Apparently, he doesn't have health insurance right now for some reason. He missed a payment. He put this whole thing on one of his Facebook posts, and he needs to get a hip replacement surgery. He has more than enough money to pay for this thing out of pocket. He's just exploring other options, I think. But the fact that a guy like Mick Foley, he's taken so much abuse, and his body has been put through hell for the last 20 years, I cannot believe that he does not have insurance or even had the possibility of losing his insurance due to a non-payment. I can't believe that that's something that he did not stay on top of. But anyway, that's beside the point. But he does have that going on in his life right now, which means you would think at some point he's going to have to be written off TV in his GM role. And I think at this point we should keep a lookout for the seeds of that being planted, because I think it could happen at any time. But he's out there to talk about Monday Night Raw, I think, and Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho interrupt him and they start bitching at him. Mick Foley announces that he's going to give Kevin Owens an opportunity, and that opportunity is to have his very own talk show, which at first when Mick Foley said this, the crowd kind of booed, and I kind of booed inside. The last thing we need right now on WWE TV is another talk show. How many do we have? Miz TV, Rollins Report, Ambrose Asylum, Highlight Reel, and now Owens Show, or the Kevin Owens Show. However, with some of the things they would do later on, I wound up being an instant fan of the Kevin Owens Show, but still, it's like, really, WWE? Another fucking talk show? So Mick Foley announces that that's going to happen, and his very first guest on his inaugural edition of the Kevin Owens Show is going to be Bill Goldberg, and that would be the final segment. That prompts, I think, Stephanie to come out next, and she makes some matches of her own. Kind of taking a shot at Mick a little bit for making the Owens versus Reigns match without consulting her first or something like that. So, they are teasing it a little bit. Stephanie goes on to announce that we're going to have another U.S. title match on Raw. This time Roman Reigns is going to be defending his belt against Chris Jericho again. Now, first of all, she announces that if Roman Reigns loses the match via disqualification or if he gets counted out, he will also lose the title. She then goes on to make a one-on-one match between Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. The loser of that match will be banned from ringside of the U.S. title match. And Mick Foley even tripped himself up there too. You can tell Mick Foley and his brain and stuff's starting to take its toll on him. They're talking about all the people that they're going to ban from the match, and Foley says that they should ban Jericho from ringside, but Jericho's in the fucking match. So, Mick Foley's kind of all over the place right now, and sometimes when he botches, it's extremely uncomfortable. But that whole segment basically set up everything we would see later on. So Kevin Owens took on Seth Rollins. That match kicked off Raw. Kevin Owens got disqualified. I think he used the ring bell or something on Seth Rollins, and he lost the match. So that means Kevin Owens would be banned from ringside of the Jericho versus Reigns match. That match, surprisingly, was not the main event. It was the whole Kevin Owens Show segment, but it was still a pretty decent match. I mean, Jericho, you got to hand it to him for his age. He's not putting on horrible matches, and I legit straight thought that he was going to win that U.S. title when he pulled the Eddie Guerrero move, and he nailed, I think, Roman with the code breaker after that, and it was like 2 9/10. I mean, it was so close to a 3 count. I thought he had it, and I thought that would have been awesome to have like the dueling BFF champions. I've always thought that since Roman Reigns' U.S. title title reign is kind of meh. Why not take it off of him and give it to Jericho and let Jericho make that U.S. title entertaining as shit when he's paired up with his BFF in crime, Kevin Owens? But Jericho comes up short, winds up eating a spear and getting pinned. Not horribly disappointing because the match was pretty decent, to be honest with you. Now that brings us to the main event segment, and that was, of course, the Kevin Owens show. Chris Jericho's out there with him, and they're going to await Goldberg's entrance. And the set that they have is hilarious. They have this like nice desk and chairs, but the guest's chair is a little tiny like lawn chair, like super small kid beach chair or something. And just the very thought of Goldberg sitting in that thing was cracking me up when I was watching Raw. And I love the human sign, the guy standing there with the Kevin Owens show sign over his face. It reminded me of when The Rock would put the t-shirt over Michael Cole's face. Great stuff. So even though I kind of rolled my eyes at another talk show segment, I gotta say the way the whole Kevin Owens thing was put together was pretty entertaining. And if anybody can have an entertaining talk show, I think Kevin Owens can have as good a one as anybody, if not better than all of them. Jericho actually announces himself as the third entrant in the Rumble, so now we've got Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, and Jericho. Kevin Owens is visibly upset by this and says, hey, what if you win? Then we have to fight each other or whatever. So, you know, eventually these two guys are going to have a match probably at WrestleMania. Whether or not there's a belt on the line, you know, is yet to be determined. We have to wait until after the Royal Rumble to see what happens there. But Owens was definitely not happy with Jericho entering the Rumble, and as they're arguing about it, that's when Goldberg comes out. And he comes out there, and I kind of like a little bit what they did here. Goldberg starts getting angry and taking his jacket off and says, since Jericho announced that he's the third entrant in the Rumble, that means he's going to be first. I guess that means he's going to be the first one that Goldberg eliminates. And it's pretty cool to see these guys interacting on TV in 2017. Holy shit, with all of their history and the infamous backstage kind of scuffle that took place between the two of them. And even though they're probably cool with each other, I still don't think they have a whole lot of love for each other. So that's kind of funny to see on TV. But I like that Kevin Owens got in Goldberg's face. He was mad that Goldberg threw out the little lawn chair, so he took the rest of the furniture and threw it out of the ring himself and got right in Goldberg's face. And WWE gave Kevin Owens the opportunity to kind of cut a promo with an icon like that face to face. I think it was good for him, and I think he did well. Roman Reigns then also comes out before Owens and Goldberg can get into it, and of course him and Goldberg have the big stare down, and that's pretty epic too. You know, yesterday's star versus today's star. Both guys use the spear as their finisher. Goldberg, I would say, was just, a tiny bit more over than Roman Reigns was, but still, as far as their stature in their respective companies and their places on their respective rosters, they're pretty much equals, like it or not. So they had the big stare down there, and then Braun Strowman's music hit, and he comes down to the ring, gets in the ring, and he's staring at the two of them, and you could see it coming a mile away. You knew the two of them were going to nail Braun Strowman with a double spear. They kind of looked at each other, gave each other a little nod, and then took down Braun Strowman, and that's pretty much, the way the show went off the air. To me, it wasn't that entertaining of a segment, although I did like the fact that they had Goldberg interacting with other people other than just Paul Heyman. I mean, Goldberg is back. They should have him in there with some of these guys, some of these, younger guys or newer stars, able to get a rub off of him or just say that they worked with him or something like that. And a lot of people were bitching to me on Twitter about the segment. They didn't like it. They thought that WWE shouldn't do that to Braun Strowman. Give me a break. Braun Strowman was double speared by a future Hall of Fame icon in the business. When you talk about people being over, very few guys reached the level of overness that Goldberg did. Plus, he was so believable back in his day. He just beat Brock Lesnar, this unstoppable beast who beat The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania, beat him in a minute and 25 seconds, and then he teams up, and together with like a four-time WWE champion, they double spear Braun Strowman to take him down. You think that hurt Braun Strowman in any way? You think that was some sort of a burial? Let me tell you what a burial is. A burial is what Goldberg did to Rusev a couple of months back when he first came in. I would much rather see what WWE did in this main event segment than what they did with Goldberg and Rusev, than just feeding some guy, some semi-mid-carder to Goldberg for him to spear and jackhammer and beat the shit out of and make him look like a fool. At least with this, you had a couple of stare downs, you had a couple of interactions with WWE talent that was really cool to see. The Goldberg, Kevin Owens stuff was cool. The stare down with Roman was somewhat cool. And then the two of them took out this big, enormous beast that the WWE is pushing like $1 million, and it took the two of them to take him down. And he's probably going to be pretty goddamn impressive in the Royal Rumble himself, don't forget. So Braun Strowman can easily come back and toss any of these guys over the top rope at WrestleMania. So I do not think for 1 second that double spear by Roman Reigns and Bill Goldberg was any sort of a burial on Braun Strowman at all. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean they can't make Braun Strowman look like a piece of shit in the future. I mean, there is a rumored match between him and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and it's very possible that it could be for the title. If Roman Reigns winds up beating Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble, they'll probably have a rematch where Reigns will win that, and then he'll go on to WrestleMania potentially to face Braun Strowman, who might be the winner of the Royal Rumble, or he might not. Somebody else might win the Rumble, like The Undertaker, and Braun Strowman can get the title shot for the Universal title in a different way. But I think it's entirely possible that we see Roman and Braun at WrestleMania. We can debate whether or not, it should have the title or whatever at a later time. That's not important right at this second. But all in all, I didn't think Goldberg's return to Raw was really that bad. What else did you want from the guy? For me, it was refreshing to see him, number one, not destroy somebody like Rusev, and number two, not come out there and just have a promo with Paul Heyman and do his big long entrance and say he's going to beat up Brock Lesnar at the Rumble and walk away. At least this way, he rubbed shoulders with some of WWE's other top talent, which I don't see anything wrong with whatsoever. But I wouldn't necessarily call Raw a great show. I mean, the only other thing on Raw of any significance was the last man standing match that they advertised between Braun Strowman and Sami Zayn, which actually started out great. Sami Zayn was holding his own. He seems absolutely fearless. I think this is a really good way. This is Sami Zayn's best chance yet to get over on the Raw roster if he can have a good showing here against Braun Strowman. And he took it to him, and he didn't back down, and they were all over the crowd. They were in the backstage area, had everything you would expect. And then in the end, it did kind of fall flat a little bit with just Braun beating him. I didn't mind that Braun won, or I wanted to see Sami Zayn get lucky. Maybe while they were backstage, he was lucky enough to push over, a 2-ton crate on top of Braun Strowman to where he couldn't get up, and he had no choice but to not answer the 10 count because he was pinned underneath something, and Sami Zayn can kind of get the victory in that sort of way, launching him more, but really didn't hurt Braun Strowman any in the long run either. I thought they might do something like that, but no, Braun Strowman wound up beating the shit out of Sami Zayn, and even lifted him up from falling to the 10 count a couple of times, only to eventually win in the end. So overall, good match, but the ending was just kind of lacking something for me. I don't know. Other than that, the only thing I really am going to talk about is Bayley officially is the new number one contender now. She beat Nia Jax in a one-on-one match. I think Sasha came out there, her music started playing, and Nia was on like the second rope, and Bayley jumped up there and gave her the Bayley to belly from the second rope and got the victory. So she'll be taking on Charlotte at the Royal Rumble, which is good because I was not interested in seeing these two girls wrestle one-on-one at WrestleMania. As far as the rest of Raw, you guys saw it. I'm not really going to discuss it any further than that. Let's move into Smackdown now, which was a fantastic show. What a way to kick off the new year. Everybody's been saying that Smackdown is better, and I don't even really get into this, but I do enjoy seeing the fans so passionate about which show they like better. So many fans tweet me all the time, SmackDown is a better show, it's 10 times better than Raw, and really trying to hammer home this opinion that SmackDown is better, and I think that that's great. I think that's awesome that the fans are actually feeling that strongly about a show. Me personally, I just don't care. You don't have to convince me. Some weeks I'm going to like Raw better, some weeks I'm going to like SmackDown better. In the past few weeks, I've been liking SmackDown a hell of a lot better than Monday Night Raw, and this most recent edition was great. What an awesome way to start out the new year. I think from top to bottom, the show was very entertaining, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's 2 hours. Not only do they just seem to have their shit together more in general than Monday Night Raw, it's just so much easier to watch a 2-hour show than a 3-hour show. Raw just goes on for too fucking long, and it's too loaded with filler and commercials and stuff that just puts you to sleep. SmackDown doesn't have that kind of time, so they have to make all of their segments as significant as possible, and tonight, damn near every one of them were. We opened up the show with The Miz and Maurice cutting a promo. The Miz is pissed off because Daniel Bryan has given Dean Ambrose an Intercontinental title shot. That match is going to be the main event of SmackDown. Dean Ambrose comes out to the ring to kind of get in the Miz's face. He winds up being slapped by Maurice and then delivers the great line that the hardest part of his night is over because Maurice hits a hell of a lot harder than her husband does, which I got a big kick out of that. Later on, Maurice even corners Renee Young backstage and nails her with a pretty vicious slap herself, which, got her a ton of heat. So eventually Renee's going to have to get involved in this thing. I thought she would get involved in the match, but she really didn't. But I'm going to save my thoughts on the Intercontinental title match for a second because I want to roll through the rest of the show here and what we saw and just kind of talk about how well balanced and great it was right from start to finish. That opening segment was pretty good and it set the stage for the main event, and then they moved on to some other things that were all equally as good. We had some pretty major things take place on SmackDown. We also had a heel turn, pretty much. I mean, I don't know if it's a done deal or guaranteed quite yet, but it looks to me that Dolph Ziggler turned heel. He had a match with Baron Corbin, which he lost cleanly, and then Baron Corbin goes out to the ring to get a chair to add insult to injury after the match. Kalisto comes down there to make the save, saves Dolph Ziggler from getting pounded with the steel chair, and then Dolph just snaps and super kicks Kalisto, and walks off. He then goes backstage and goes ape shit back there, starts throwing luggage around and tearing his locker up, and finally Apollo Crews gets in his face, and Ziggler attacks him, and they have to be pulled apart. So to me, it looks like Ziggler snapped. I think that's good for him. Why not? You might as well turn him heel at this point. I don't know what else there is to do with him. The fans popped hard when he super kicked Kalisto, so I think they're into a Dolph Ziggler heel turn. We all are. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take WWE to fuck the whole thing up, because they probably will. But if they kind of turn Ziggler back into that cocky and arrogant guy, maybe not too much like The Miz, they already have that character on SmackDown, although the two of them could team up and do something similar to Jericho and Kevin Owens. I think they could be really entertaining together. But, you know, if Ziggler kind of goes back to his roots and goes back to who he was before and the show-off and the cocky, arrogant shit, I'm all on board with it. So I hope the heel turn is actually a heel turn, and this is just not a babyface that got frustrated and then goes around and apologizes to Kalisto and Crews and stays a babyface. I doubt that'll happen, but I guess it could. I guess by next week we probably will have confirmation on this heel turn. There will be some sort of a segment with Kalisto and Dolph Ziggler, or a match. Actually, that would be a good match, now that I think about it. Kalisto and Dolph Ziggler, or maybe Kalisto and Crews, and something will happen where Ziggler will snap again and super kick one of their heads off and confirm that he is indeed a heel. So I've got high hopes for that, and I hope it turns out to be successful. How about the contract signing? That was even pretty good. John Cena and AJ Styles were going to sign their contract for their WWE title match at the Royal Rumble. Daniel Bryan was moderating this thing. They both come out there, and both of them cut pretty damn good promos. AJ Styles was great in what he said, talking about the comparisons between John Cena and The Rock and how much of a loser he's going to be if he winds up losing to AJ and all this stuff. I think a guy like AJ Styles, scripted promos for him, provided that they don't suck, actually works for AJ. When he was on Talking Smack last week trying to improvise, and ad-lib some smack talking to John Cena, he didn't have anything good to say. He kept stumbling over his words. He even went silent a couple of times because he couldn't think of what to say. And I think these situations, like we saw on SmackDown, with him just cutting the promo in John Cena's face, was much better for AJ. John Cena sat there in the chair the whole time and waited for his turn to cut a promo, and stuck with that angry kind of Cena stuff. The first week he was out there talking about how much he respected AJ, and this time he says, I don't respect you at all. I've lost all respect for you. I think you're a little fucking punk, and I'm going to kick your ass, and you don't fuck with me, and you don't cross me, and the worst mistake of your life was pissing off John Cena, and all of that stuff. So I much prefer angry John Cena. I love the angry, mad, don't fuck with me type of guy. And considering how good SmackDown is, that's the only way I think SmackDown fans can tolerate Cena. Think about that. The show that the majority of the wrestling fans consider the better of the two has John Cena in a major role. Like I said before, he's much easier to swallow when he's not the focal point of every single thing the WWE is doing. The fans can take him a little bit better, and I think they're taking this whole situation with John Cena and AJ Styles a lot better than they normally do. I don't even see people really freaking out about the possibility of John Cena winning the world title. He very well could, and he probably will at the Royal Rumble, and nobody's even losing their shit about it, and I think that's progress, and that's good. I was really hoping the two guys wouldn't come to blows tonight. I mean, we've seen so many matches between the two. There's no reason for it to erupt in fisticuffs or a brawl to happen like every contract signing does. I wanted to see these guys project the feeling that this is a big-time match, kind of a stare-down, maybe an angry shake of the hands or something like that, but I didn't want to see any fighting. And then Baron Corbin showed up at the very end of it, right when you thought it was over, and kind of ruined the whole damn thing. I didn't really like Baron Corbin coming out there. I like the guy's push. I like what the WWE is doing with him, and he is one of my favorite younger guys that they have there, and I think he has awesome potential and should make a lot of waves in the Royal Rumble. But he came out there just to announce that he's going to be in the Royal Rumble, which we knew that. I mean, it was pretty much a given that somebody like Baron Corbin, the winner of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, yes, would probably be in the Royal Rumble. Not a shocker. You didn't need to come out there and ruin the whole damn segment, but still, having Corbin come out there with AJ and John shows you that WWE wants you to believe that this guy is a future main event player, and he very well could be. So I didn't really care for the Baron Corbin interference there, but at the same time, I guess it wasn't the worst thing in the world, and the segment did end with AJ actually attacking John Cena when his back was turned, which kind of sucks. So we did have a little bit of physicality there, but after what John Cena said to AJ, shit, I'd kick the guy too. So whatever. That match is set for the Royal Rumble right now, and I talked about it last week. I think it's a really good possibility that John Cena could win the WWE title, and now there's talk that if he goes into WrestleMania to face The Undertaker, it could be for the WWE title. I mentioned last week that I didn't want that to happen. I thought the marquee value of a John Cena and Undertaker match did not need a world title, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more more I'm starting to be convinced by the people who think it should have the belt. Maybe it should, especially if it's a career match. That's a huge deal. It could be title versus career. It could also justify the match being in the main event, because if John Cena and Taker were in the main event but weren't world champion, that does rub some people the wrong way. Doesn't bother me as much, especially with 2 titles, because if you have one title in the main event, then it devalues the other in some cases. So to me, I really don't care too much about the main event. But if you had John Cena versus The Undertaker, career versus title, that could be a pretty significant marquee main event for WrestleMania 33. And I'd probably be okay with it. I pitched John Cena winning the title from AJ Styles and dropping it at the next pay-per-view, with The Undertaker interfering and costing Cena the title, setting up the WrestleMania match, getting John Cena's 16th title reign while at the same time taking the belt off of him quickly, and giving it back to AJ Styles while setting up his match with The Undertaker at the same time, killing a whole bunch of birds with one stone. It's still possible that all happens, but who knows? They could go in a lot of different directions now, and I guess it's not even set in stone that Cena and Taker is even happening. There's been talk of Roman Reigns and The Undertaker. There's even been talk, I think, possibly of John Cena versus Roman Reigns, because why did Cena attack Roman Reigns in that tweet? There was a hilarious video going around on Twitter where Kevin Owens and Roman were working at a house show, and Kevin Owens had Roman in a headlock, and he's talking shit to one of the fans at ringside, and he's doing it in such a hilarious way that Roman Reigns just can't stop laughing, and he's putting his hands over his face to cover his laughter, and later on he tweeted something out to explain why he was laughing, basically just saying, I was laughing because Kevin Owens thinks he makes a lot of money, but I was laughing about how little it was. And then John Cena chimes in and gives Roman shit for making fun of what people earn and shows himself at Roman Reigns' college lifting weights in the gym there or whatever. So I think it's possible that a Roman Reigns-John Cena match could happen in the future, maybe next year at WrestleMania 34 or something like that, but I guess we can't rule out that confrontation either. And I don't know if there's any beef there, because that's something that couldn't have been planned. Nobody knew that fan was going to video record Roman Reigns laughing. And then Roman Reigns tweeted a response to it, and then John Cena chimed in. So it's not something that they could have been planting a seed for a future match. So you got to wonder if John Cena has any issues with Roman Reigns in such a random tweet to just attack him like that for no reason. So who knows what that all means, but I guess you can't rule out the possibility of Cena and Roman at WrestleMania either. So luckily, we still have like 4 weeks until the Royal Rumble, so there is plenty of time to talk about the different scenarios and the different ideas that they could do for the finish of the title match, whether or not John Cena is going to win or lose or whatever the hell's going to happen at WrestleMania. We have plenty of time still to talk about that, and feel free to leave me any of your ideas in the comments below. We also saw a really good promo between Nikki and Natalya, which got crazy. I cannot believe some of the shit that Natalya was saying to Nikki, basically saying she's relying on her looks. When her looks fade, John Cena's going to leave her. She even showed the tweet that Bret Hart put up last week on Twitter, a picture of him with Nikki Bella, complimenting her and saying how hard she works and how much he admires her. And Natalya goes on to insinuate that Nikki Bella might have done something to persuade Bret to put that tweet up, which basically means that she sunny-dazed her own fucking uncle. What the hell is going on here? So the whole promo was pretty damn good, and eventually Nikki just lost her temper and nailed Natalya with a vicious forearm and knocked her out and walked away. I mean, how many times are we really excited about a Nikki Bella promo? But that whole piece of business was pretty good as well. Probably the most uninteresting thing that took place on the whole show was Carmella having a match with Aaliyah and James Ellsworth being in her corner, and she won. I guess Ellsworth is like her lucky charm or something like that. So that was probably the least interesting segment that took place. We also had American Alpha destroying Breezango in like 20 seconds, which was pretty awesome. And then the Wyatt family cut a promo on the Titantron after the match, and they will have a tag team title rematch next week on Smackdown. So we'll get the Wyatts taking on American Alpha. I don't know if the Wyatts are going to win it back or if they're going to start building more of the tension between all of them in a possible match between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. I think taking the tag belts off of them came a little bit early. I don't see them winning it back next week. Why would they put the belts on American Alpha just to have them lose it again, especially when Alpha is looking so dominant right now and the quick work they made of Breezango? I think Alpha needs to survive. As much as I want to see Bray and Randy as tag team champions, at this point you've given them to American Alpha, so you need to let them run with them. So I don't think the Wyatts are going to be regaining the belts next week, although I could be totally wrong. And now on to the main event, of course, Dean Ambrose versus The Miz for the Intercontinental title. We already saw a great Smackdown, and I was wondering if we were going to see a cherry on top and a nice title change to close the show, especially after what Maurice did to Renee backstage. I thought Renee was going to get involved in this thing and interfere or something like that. Maurice sure as hell got involved in this match a couple of times. Eventually, the referee throws her out. Long story short, Dean Ambrose nails The Miz with dirty deeds and pins him and wins the Intercontinental title to close the show. I thought that was awesome. Now, let me ask you this. Wasn't Dean Ambrose the Intercontinental Champion around this time last year? Wasn't he feuding with Kevin Owens for the belt, if I remember correctly? Has anybody in WWE history ever gone from holding the Intercontinental title to holding the World title and then going back to holding the Intercontinental title and doing that all in a span of like 1 year? I know some guys have gone from the IC to the World back to the IC, but has any of that ever taken place inside of 1 year? That's pretty incredible and something that would have been totally unheard of 20 years ago. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Dean Ambrose, but congrats to him, new Intercontinental Champion, and I'm sure him and The Miz are going to have plenty of rematches and possibly, The Miz even getting that belt back at some point. I wouldn't be surprised. SmackDown was great. The whole 2-hour show, I didn't find myself bored once, where at Raw, I think I struggled to even keep my eyes open a couple of times. So SmackDown is definitely on a roll. They even beat Raw in the ratings last week, which was John Cena's return to the company, so that probably had a little bit to do with it, but definitely wasn't the whole reason, and we'll have to see how the ratings do this week and if SmackDown can keep that up, but it's the first time they've ever beaten Raw in the ratings, and I think a lot of fans are starting to get on that SmackDown bandwagon, and I'm happy to see that. I love that the fans are picking sides. Me, personally, I don't care which show is better. I just want to be entertained, so I'm not going to get mad if Raw has a good show or has a better show than SmackDown one week. I really don't think that way, but I'm glad that some of the fans are. I think that's what the WWE wants. I mean, they want to develop their own identities for these shows. At least I would think they want to do that. And when you think about what they're doing right now with the differences between Raw and SmackDown and then the differences between NXT and Raw and SmackDown, you really have 3 shows, 4 if you count 205 Live, that sort of have different feels to them and different identities, about as close as you can have for everything being under the same umbrella, and I think that's a positive thing. So I'm optimistic for 2017. I'm optimistic every year. I'll move on briefly to just a couple of other things I wanted to talk about that's in the news. The Jimmy Superfly Snuka murder charges were dropped. He should have been convicted and arrested and put in jail right at the very beginning for that manslaughter charge, and I think too much time has passed now. Snuka can barely even comprehend things, and he's very old, and it's just too late to punish him almost. And they just dropped the charges or threw it out, and I don't even know what happened, but it's a shame. I mean, Jimmy Snuka most likely is guilty of this, and I feel bad for his victim and their family that they're never really truly going to get closure, which kind of sucks. Speaking of people that have issues with the law, Alberto Del Rio was arrested in Austria, some sort of a bar fight, and then apparently he was even fighting with his own brother in the police station or something like that. I just recently made comments about Alberto Del Rio, how I always respected him. I always liked his wrestling style and his personality, and I thought he was a good guy to have on the WWE roster, and I was always a fan of his. But when he left and he got that wellness policy violation and he started dating Paige, shit started happening to him. He's been in a backstage fight more than once since he's been let go from WWE. I think he was stabbed not long ago. He's got this crazy-ass relationship with Paige to where they're doing and saying dumb shit. And I think he's spiraling out of control, and I'm a little bit worried about Alberto Del Rio. He seems too good for this. So it seems like he's got one incident after another here, and that cannot please WWE too well because Paige is back. Her suspension is over. She was backstage at Raw, apparently, and so now she's got to be back there every day dealing with WWE management, the same people that she's been sticking her tongue out at on social media and on TMZ and stuff for the past couple of months. Now she's got to be back there in this environment, and they're probably, having a few conversations with her about get your shit together, or we're not going to use you, or we're going to fire you. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start punishing Paige when she comes back and returns to TV if they don't have her lose for a couple of months before they start doing anything with her again. Wouldn't be surprised at all. And finally, apparently the WrestleMania 34 location has been revealed. It's going back to New Orleans. That surprises me. They were just there 4 years ago for WrestleMania 30, and now they will be returning. I was really thinking about attending this year's WrestleMania. I really wanted to. I've been to Orlando a bunch of times. I love the city. I thought it would be fun to go down there and take part in WrestleMania weekend and maybe meet some of you. I have a Hawaii trip. I have to leave 2 days after WrestleMania to go to Hawaii, and it's going to be really tough for me to swing it. But the fact that they're going to New Orleans for WrestleMania 34, that is a show I should probably try to plan on attending. I think it would be a lot of fun. So since WrestleMania is going to be in a dome and going to a part of the country that I'm kind of familiar with, I might give WrestleMania 34 a shot. And it's pretty cool that it's going back to New Orleans. I have no problem with that. It was really successful last time they were there. WrestleMania 30 was an awesome show and a crazy weekend with everything that took place with Daniel Bryan and the Ultimate Warrior and the Undertaker and all that stuff. Going back to New Orleans, I'm fine with it. So congrats to them and congrats to the city for landing WrestleMania yet again. All right, that's it for me. I am out of here. Keep a lookout on my channel. The next 5 to 7 days here, I will have episode 400 up to you. Just a fun little different kind of episode that I'm going to do. And I'll be back up here about regular time next week to talk about Raw and Smackdown and what we're looking at heading into the Royal Rumble. Once again, Happy New Year to everybody out there, and I will catch you guys in just a few days. Until next time, peace.